In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. So I go to this story out of Tennessee, which is extremely strange. Tennessee protesters could now lose their right to vote under a new law signed by Governor Bill Lee. Protesters who camp out on state property, such as the activists who have demonstrated for months outside the state capitol against racial injustice, could now face felony charges punishable by up to 6 years in prison. Convicted felons are automatically stripped of their voting rights in Tennessee. Now, I'm sorry. Now, all these conservatives out here love talking about 2A, meaning the Second Amendment. And here you have Tennessee passing a law trying to make it a felony for people practicing their First Amendment rights. Eugene Craig, sounds to me like Republicans in Tennessee are trying to keep black folks and others from protesting.
That's exactly what's going on. You'll see Republicans stretch many definitions to stop black folk from doing something. That's what we're seeing in Tennessee right now. They don't like the pressure. They don't like the attention. They don't like the progress and change that comes when people are actually able to stand up for themselves and demand their just due in this country, in this society. And so what you're seeing now is a literal criminalization of their First Amendment rights. That's nothing more, nothing less, just literally the criminalization of it. And, I think, and this is where, the courts become very important. Because when you have constitutional violations like this, typically you'll go to federal court and, it'll work itself through the federal judiciary. But, as we know, Team Trump has been actively reworking to reshape what that judiciary looks like.
It is strange, Mustafa. Again, what we're seeing is we are seeing the targeting of protesters. I'm trying to figure out how in the hell this thing hasn't even been declared unconstitutional by targeting people who are protesting. It's a First Amendment right.
It is a right, but we see our rights continue to be stripped away, left and right. And again, Department of Justice, where are you at? How come you're not stepping in on some of these things? But beyond that, to have a felony on your record is some serious stuff, because that then also eliminates you from a whole bunch of sets of opportunities. So not only do they strip you away from being able to vote, then they stop it. Say you are a young person, and we know plenty of young people are out protesting, trying to make change happen. Now you can't get federal student aid because you got a felony on your record. And there is a laundry list of other things that go along with that. So we understand this vicious game of trying to strip people's opportunities to fully engage in a civic process. And here's the last thing I'll say on this. So you're upset that people are protesting on the land that their tax dollars is paying for you to do your job on. There's something not quite right.
It really is baffling. But then again, this is the same Tennessee, Kelly, that previously wanted to restrict folks in the collection of ballots. This is the latest tactic of Republicans to target people of color, whether it is voting or whether it is protesting.
Yeah, I just feel like I need to make this announcement to those who are trying to infiltrate and perpetuate these types of policies. Jim Crow died a very long time ago. Not long enough of a time ago, but long enough nevertheless. You cannot think for a second that we can go back to that kind of fascist regime without some form of pushback from the minority group, quote unquote, that is becoming larger by the day, just by way of demographics and how this country is shaping up. It is just appalling to me that people think now they can get away with something so blatantly unconstitutional. And the fact that it's not a situation of bringing a weapon to the state property or fighting on the state property, just spending the night, just your presence there in protest, which is your First Amendment right. So they're telling me that basically I have somewhat of a curfew to protest, even though I did all the necessary precautions in order to do so within my First Amendment right. So you're infringing on my First Amendment right. You are, by way of doing that, you are infringing upon my right to vote. And then you're infringing upon my other First Amendment right, not by way of just assembly, but protest as well. So it's just, on all accounts, just frankly dumb of these people to think that they can get away with it.
Well, but again, if you're in power, if you're in power, that's the whole point. They believe they can get away with it. That's the whole strategy. I mean, bottom line is they're looking.
It doesn't make it right.
No, I understand that, but again, no, their whole deal is, look, this is no different than during Jim Crow era. You pass laws to force the people you're fighting to go to court and fight it, to waste crucial time. That's what the whole strategy is. And again, Tennessee has previously done that. Folks, is Reverend there? Reverend Barber there? All right, Reverend William Barber, repairs of the breach. What's happening in Tennessee? Again, this is the kind of thing that we have seen historically, where folks in power want to suppress black folks from and others from advancing their rights. Now, all of a sudden, you want to make it a felony if you're protesting? Yeah, game recognized game.
Exactly. And that group has actually been a part of Justin, one of the leaders, a part of the Poor People's Campaign from the beginning. And, this has a long history, Roland. They started out protesting some years ago, kind of a Moral Monday situation, challenging the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House called them criminals and then ended up having to resign himself for the things that he was doing in the Speaker of the House. They actually targeted one young man, trying to do everything they can to remove him. He's a student of Diane Nash and James Lawson and the Vanderbilt School of Theology. But now they say they want to make it a felony if you protest. Now, this is across the country. South Carolina, as you know, tried to charge Bree Newsom with a felony for climbing up and challenging the a Confederate flag. They tried to make this a felony down in Alabama. They don't want to let you inside of the state legislature. When we were in North Carolina, Roland, when they first arrested us, they arrested us for praying. They said we could not even bring a placard inside the General Assembly building, had to stay in a designated place. And if we raised our voices, and someone complained about it, then in fact, we could be arrested and be removed. This one is going further. It's saying we want to do all these things and take your right to vote. It's got to be challenged in court. We're in touch with them on the ground. We're talking to some lawyers now. This has to be fought in court. It cannot stand that you're protesting and then turn into a felony. Nonviolent protesting, by the way. Nonviolent protesting turned into a felony and then used as an excuse to take your voting rights. It also says, finally, the folks are scared. A young lady who ran for the Democratic seat for the Senate in the primary, African-American woman, won. And she's running on an issue to deal with poverty, and those issues didn't raise for $8,200 and won the primary. And now is the Democratic senator nominee. So there's something going on in Tennessee. It's the place where they murdered and assassinated Dr. King, but there's a rising going on in Tennessee. And we've got to stand beside them in that state.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park, in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding of services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov.